Courage Culture Commentary.
One of the things that I'm a little torn on and I'm trying to make up my mind about is the actual temperature of America when it comes to military interaction. Because for the longest time I did feel the war weariness, even myself. And I mean, I know the realities of the world at large because I've seen it with my own eyes, but I've also felt the war weariness. I think, the libertarian side of both of us has felt that. But one of the things I
think that it would have been different had the media covered it differently.
I think so, and I was about to say this, and I wonder what your thoughts are. My latest sort of thinking on this is that I don't know that the American people are war-weary in the classic sense. I think what we long for is a very, very decisive man in office that says, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to hold back our troops. We're not going to hold back our military prowess. We're going to very effectively implement this very specific, back-breaking, fierce military action. We're going to succeed at implementing this. There is no cost that we're not willing to pay, and there's no media coverage that we're not willing to endure to succeed. I think that the tone of the American people would be incredibly surprising if we saw that. What we've seen, and quite frankly in the administration too, is somebody who wants their military cake and they want their peace. They want to eat that too. And that's, of course, because we have a treasonous media. We have the whole party, frankly, was willing to smirch and slander not only the president, but the military personnel implementing that policy just for political gain. And they ended up poisoning the well, so much so that now their own president, the anti-Iraq president, is literally got a noose around his neck because of the realities that mentality created. And I think there's something to learn from this. The left turns these mobs. The left creates these Frankensteinian mobs for their own purposes. And then once the mob's out of the gate, they can't even control it, and oftentimes they get gobbled up by that mob. And I think you're seeing that right now. They turned a mindless millennial mob against war, not based on facts, but against slogans like Blood for Oil and Halliburton, all of which were fictitious. And now that mob doesn't even see nuance. That mob doesn't even see, we live in a real world with real enemies that need to be confronted with a very real military footprint. They're so mindless and they're so Jon Stewarted up with these slogans that they don't even understand that this world is really confronting evil. What do you think about that?
I'll agree with that in the sense that that's mindset they created. I'm a little shocked that there's not more war protests because there were so many with Bush. It doesn't seem like that group of people is as outspoken. However, I do agree that the populace, their minds have been changed. I do agree that the populace is no longer interested in any sort of conflict, good, bad, or indifferent. I do agree with that. I think this is a very real evil in your face, and you're still not crying out that it be silenced. I mean, maybe a little more so than surprisingly, a little more so than I expected, but not as much as a different generation would have been.
But what do you think of the philosophy of what we want is a very distinctive leader rather than a political opportunist? Is there any truth to that, or do you not suspect that that's true? So in other words, if we had an administration that came in and just dealt with business, I need to tell you this, Luke, in my time in the military, it was one of the most awe-striking moments of my life when I fully realized the breadth and depth of power that the U.S. military holds. Now, you have to bear in mind, that was 2004, 2005, and we have been gutted since then. But the ability militarily is something that almost strikes you with a lot of fear because it is profound power. So with a will. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if we recognize Islamofascism for what it is, and we truly seek out to destroy it, and I mean destroy it, that is completely within the reach of the United States.
Not just playing around with it like we do. We play around with it. Just
no cat and mouse, no political gamemanship, just deal with the problem. Do you think that the American people would respond to that positively or negatively? I'm not sure. What do you think?
Man, we've got the masses. It's any social issue, any issue like this is so interesting because it's masses. And when you're dealing with masses, it's really hard to read how the masses are going to react. I think if you sit down individually with people and kind of talk about this issue, you're going to get a far different reaction than if you just say a group on a whole.
Yeah, I think that's insightful.
But I can sum it all together. I can sum it all up. All the scandals, things that aren't scandals that became scandals, like the war, like weapons of mass destruction, things that are manufactured scandals just to bring down the presidency. Or real scandals that should be taken care of in Benghazi, Fast and Furious, the IRS thing. It's just the fact that people don't care. And that really is what it comes down to, because if they cared enough to know the truth, a lot of those things would never have got taken hold.
Yeah, I think that's true.
If they cared enough to know the truth about Benghazi or about Fast and Furious, people would be punished. But we just don't care. And you know, that doesn't mean you don't stop doing what you're doing in hopes that people don't wake up. It just means that when these things happen and you see that the reaction is nothing, and when it needs to be something, this time, and it's nothing, that's the solution. People just don't. I mean, for God's sakes, this, you know, when the Obamacare passed, I thought there was going to be this uprising. You know, when all these social issues start making real difference in people's lives, people don't find work, you know, the housing market, all these big things happen, you think, okay, this is going to be the thing. Or even bring down this president. This is going to be the thing. This is going to be the thing. It's never the thing. It's people don't care.
Yeah. I think you're so right, and I think that's a very insightful sort of big tent way to describe it. In other words, there's no length so far that apathy can't reach.
Well, I mean, it's apathy now, but it's kind of this 1984 style apathy, which it's like a cancer. It's not like this on the surface youthful apathy, which I think is probably a good thing. You know, between 9 and 15, you probably shouldn't care about this stuff. Like that kind of apathy, if you do have interest in certain things, I think that's a good thing, but not necessarily needed. But
right.
It's this ingrained, intricate part of our lives that is just destroying us. And the end result's going to be we're going to lose everything, because you can't, metaphors being what they are, you can't take care of a garden, you know, if it doesn't have sun and fertilizer and water. You can't take care of a country like this unless you're willing to fight for it. Even if it's just the ideology, even if you're not willing to fight physically or able to fight physically, you have to fight for the ideology, which means becoming active.
I think that's so profound, Luke, and it makes me think of the biblical phrase, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's something like, when the righteous are in charge, you know, the people are happy, and when the unrighteous are in charge, the people scream out in the agony of injustice. And, you know, it's framed something like that. And I think that is so a slogan of our time, that what you see, you mentioned so eloquently that there are things that happen that just demand action. You know, you're wanting to see somebody losing their job. You're wanting to see somebody incarcerated. You're wanting to see justice. And when you continuously see that there is not only not justice, but there's not even attention paid to it, you just fall into a strange psychological state. It's a very fetal position of fear and powerlessness. And I like that phrase, 1984 apathy. It's a specific apathy. It's not just general youthful indifference, but it's harmful, destructive, corrosive apathy. I think that's so well said.
Yeah, you know, I think about this all the time, because I don't on my daily social interactions, I very rarely get any feedback that gives me hope. Some of these older people are a lot more conservative than you would think, and then, you know, they're upset about the world falling apart around them. Young people, I'd say 40 and below, they really don't care. I mean, I talked about this so many different times in so many different ways, and the truth is, there's a lot that goes into this that makes it the way it is. But all that stuff's really irrelevant. The point is this is where we're at. And all these things have to line up in order for, you know, the stuff as far as end times and the Bible. Some of the stuff you would never in a million years would have guessed America was capable of happening or letting happen. But in order for all this stuff to fall in line, you know, obviously the Bible let us know what was coming. And
right.
we now have a populace that is set up for all those things to happen without much resistance. I mean, you might get a little bit resistance, but it's going to be too late. The time was 10 years ago. The time's now. And since we haven't made those moves, when this stuff eventually and inevitably happens, so we're not going to have any sort of character to fight back against it.
So you're telling me the book's 1984 and the Brave New World are not political blueprints?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Books.
CourageCulture.com